What's up, guys? Uh, Good evening and shit. It's like 10:49 p.m.
Elden Ring is a game with many unique weapons and equipment. Clearly, the developers intended for you to explore the world in search of better gear, but for this challenge run, I'll be doing the opposite. The rules are pretty simple: beat Elden Ring with only the class starting gear, so no physic, no talismans, no new weapons, and no new armor. To start, seeing as I had no equipment to collect, I ran all the way to Liurnia to descend into the depths of the Crystallion's gaping hole. After getting the miner's bell bearing, I went to Caelid to bully everyone's favorite terminal patient for some expenditure. Using my newly acquired wealth, I upgraded the Uchigatana and leveled my stats, then went straight into Margit. Despite playing like I started the game 5 minutes ago, Margit went down pretty easily, which I didn't entirely expect, but I suppose it makes logical sense that your starting gear should be sufficient to over-aura the first boss. Since there's nothing I can get to change my build, I ran straight to Roderick, who despite his best efforts definitely didn't rule. Much like Margit, the scaling at this point in the game was low enough that my bland katana needed nothing more than a little salt and pepper to cook Godric in ample time. A few Asha Wars and riposte and he went down without putting up a fight. Before taking on any more bosses, I wanted to get my weapon upgraded as much as possible, seeing as that and leveling up my character are the only ways I have to increase my damage. I killed Magmawar Makar after a lengthy fight, then went into Altus and sold the militiaman's precious balls to upgrade my weapon to plus 12. Now that I was absolutely armed to the teeth with a plus 12 Uchigatana and nothing else, I was ready to take on every boss before Snowfields. After a totally reasonable number of attempts to kill a boss I could 4-shot, I took on Renala. Renala was annoying as always, but took good damage from the Uchigatana. Honestly, I was kind of wishing this run was harder at this point, but by the end of the run, I definitely changed my tune. I was a little scared when she started summoning her dragon and trolls, but I told her that I don't know about astrology signs, which was enough to finish her off. The next villain for me to vanquish was the Draconic Tree Sentinel, who usually provides a decent challenge. However, despite my lack of talismans or a stronger weapon, he still went down first try. You might be able to tell, but in general, I'm a very greedy player when it comes to damage, and if that makes me a pig, Tree Sentinel was a big fat trough of slop, because I essentially just hit him over and over again till he died, only even getting hit once. Next up was Golden Godfrey, who is the first boss to take multiple attempts, is the fact that I'm still using the equipment I spawned in with was finally starting to catch up with me. His attacks are fairly slow, and the Uchigatana had ample time to sneak in extra hits. However, by this point, the Asha War was the only way to deal good damage, which slowed the fight down a bit, but luckily the high poise damage of Unsheath carried me to victory. I trudged onto Margit, who was the first real challenge of the run. My damage was definitely subpar by this point, although it wasn't unbearable just yet. However, Margit's fluid combos proved to be an issue, with him simply out-damaging me. After about 20 tries, I got a winning attempt in which I poise broke him early, then whittled him down with Unsheath till he phase transitioned, totally not getting hit at all in the process. Honestly, this fight was really sloppy, which is fitting because the only reason it took so many attempts to beat him is because I was being a fat pig and was trying to get an awesome Super Smashing Bros 0 to death 3-stock wombo combo. After smacking each other around a bit more, I was able to stance break Morgott, then finish him off for the win. I grabbed the bell bearing 3 from Mountaintop of the Giants, then ran all the way to Radon to prove my attention span is stronger than his powerful brain rot. The Uchigatana dealt pretty solid damage to him, and more importantly did enough poise to get a riposte before he could phase shift, sealing Radon's fate. With my indomitable attention span, I finished him off in the second phase without much issue due to him already being pretty low, securing my victory over brain rot.
I did Ancestry.com. It turns out that I'm 17% African American. 17% African American. I am not from Wakanda. I'm from like Wakanda.
Back in Snowfield, I briefly entertained killing Vike for runes before deciding I don't hate myself. Forging forward, I fought Fire Giant who ferociously flowing fetid fire at me. However, English class has already helped me conquer obliteration, so we went down on my second try. The Uchigatana's damage was okay in the first phase. I would have liked it to be better, but on the back of its saving grace, the Unsheath Asha War, I was able to stagger Fire Giant numerous times and lay into his gangrenous foot. The second phase was a lot more annoying, but not particularly more difficult. The lack of range and damage, however, made it hard to kill him, but after a brief game of chase, he conceded to the Tickle monster. The next boss was the Godskin duo, who really wanted to end my fun. The damage damage of the katana and lack of talismans meant I could not kill them before they woke up, so just using sleep pots like normal wouldn't work. You may be wondering, aren't sleep pots technically not part of your starting gear? To which you'd be right, but this boss is abject garbage, so I don't really care. I just decided to use Bernal's summon as well to aid in the fight, as a 2v1 isn't exactly fair in my book to begin with. With Bernal's help, I successfully ran around throwing out random sleep pots and Asha Wars for the win. I suppose this was the hardest fight so far, but I don't really count it, so I'm not going to pretend like the Godskin duo is even skill-based in the first place. Next up was Malekith, who took a handful of attempts. Usually he's fairly frail, but my damage was getting pretty dismal at this point, so the fight took quite a while. In the first phase, he flipped and flopped around, which when combined with my low damage, drug out the fight. But after a while of beating him senseless with Unsheath, I riposted him to end the phase. In the second phase, I simply chased him around until he eventually went down, making it take quite a while, and despite my best efforts to sell at the last second, I took him down. Now that I had the Ashen Capital unlocked, it was time to fight everyone's favorite character, Gideon. Unfortunately for me, I failed to kill him on my first attempt, so I got stuck in Gideon Purgatory fighting him for half an hour. Eventually, I was able to take down the Elden Ring equivalent of Saruman the White by patiently waiting for his projectile vomit before beating him mercilessly. By repeating this a few times, I was able to win as my damage was decent because Gideon has very low health. At this point, the final boss standing between me and Radabeast was Horalu, who's usually pretty challenging for me to face. Luckily, in this run, he went down on my second attempt. The starting gear was definitely not good at this point as I did a minuscule amount to his health bar per attack, but luckily I was able to get by in the first phase by just sloppily damage tanking and spamming heals. This unimpressive strategy caused him to become very mad and he started to manhandle me in the second phase. Luckily, I was able to slip under his hulking figure and use Unsheath until he staggered and got the riposte for the win. Radagon and Elden Beast were surprisingly not that hard, as honestly, at this point in my Elden Ring journey, I've realized they're kinda just weak, especially for a final fight. Radagon took very little damage from my attacks, because I guess by this point you're meant to have picked up a talisman or two, but luckily for me, the old reliable Unsheath got an insane amount of poise breaks. As you see, Radagon has terrible poise. Using Unsheath against him is like the equivalent of karate chopping a popsicle stick. Needless to say, after riposting him for damage worth half his health bar, he went down. Elden Beast is definitely the worst part of the duo, and in this run it really shone through. At the start, I was able to beat him into submission and get a riposte, but then I spent 3 minutes playing tag, running back and forth across the arena, slowly whittling down his health bar with my subpar attack. Eventually he was one tap, but then he proceeded to just violently assault me, of which I managed to somehow get out of on about 20 HP. After chasing him back down though, I was able to win the fight, taking only a few attempts. Since I'm an epic video gamer, I wanted to fight Mohg and Melania, so I took on Commander Nile, who as per usual had me bashing my head against a wall, especially with how bad my damage was. Although eventually, after some lengthy tries, I killed him so I could get the Haligtree medallion. Moving on to Mohg, I was pretty concerned as I couldn't grab the physic tier to block Nihil damage, so instead of attacking him while he healed, I would just have to heal myself up, letting him go unpunished. Luckily, Mohg, Lord of Blood, has terrible defenses, so my damage was passable, and I was able to get some bleed procs. The fight was definitely really challenging, as he is a hard boss on the rare occasion he lives to the second phase, but with my practice of beating him to death with a shield, this was a cakewalk by comparison. Blocking my path to Melania was Loretta, and while I do hate her, in the context of this run she wasn't too bad, as my damage was passable and she's honestly more annoying than difficult. So after a few drawn out attempts, I was able to take her down by getting some staggers and continuing to spam the Asha War. Now for the boss most of you have probably been waiting for, Melania. When I say she was hard, I don't think you can fathom how bad this fight was. The whole run took me about 6 hours to complete up to this point, which for me is pretty standard, while Melania alone took me 5 hours to beat. Depending on what attack I used, I was dealing 350 to 900 damage. For those of you who don't know, Melania heals 500 every time she hits you, so needless to say, it would be an uphill battle to just deal enough damage to kill her. On top of that, while having no strong weapon or talismans obviously hurts damage, it also means I have no utility functions like damage negation or stamina regen, because those aren't allowed either. So surviving and dodging were also challenging. At first I approached this fight like the rest of the run, spamming the Unsheath Asha War to poise break and riposte her repeatedly. However, I began to get a gut feeling that I should ditch Asha Wars completely to maximize my heals, fighting her with light and heavy attacks. So after about another hour of trying with this new strategy, I finally got a winning attempt. It's probably the most nerve-wracking fight I've ever had in Elden Ring, as I spent nearly 8 minutes straight just fighting her, playing patiently to avoid risks, slowly withering away her health bar to get the win. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have a challenge suggestion, please comment it. I'd love to get free video ideas. Also, shout out to the editor Ab too.